Today we have Kaylee. I'm excited to share with you her story and how her story, even though abuse only happened one time, it was still abuse. And I also want to share how important her story is and that Christ is our ultimate healer. We're going to discuss how even though bad things happen, we can still become successful, happy, peaceful people and move on with our lives. Abuse doesn't have to drag us down. We can find healing and we can find relief, and that it's a process and that it's a journey. So without further ado, let's jump in. Welcome to Come Off Conqueror, a web show where we interview survivors and conquerors of sexual assault and abuse in all forms and trauma. And we discuss how we found God and we've grown closer to Him through our healing journeys. We interview firsthand survivors, experts, therapists, healers, mostly to help us heal and come unto Christ. Really, that's kind of the whole point of the show. So I'm excited for today's show and for our next guest, because she's a dear friend of mine and she's just a beautiful soul. She has such a strong testimony. I remember the first time I met her and the light in her eyes, she just radiated goodness. She's such a sweetheart. And so I'm excited to hear from her. Okay, Kaylee, welcome to our show. You are just such a doll. I really appreciate you coming on and doing this. Kaylee, you are at school right now, right?
Yes, I'm at BYU.
So she's a college student, and Kaylee also recently got engaged. And she'll be getting married soon, which is pretty exciting and so weird for me because I remember when you were this little. Makes me feel so old, but you know, life goes on. We grow up, right? And Kaylee's also a returned missionary. So she served in Georgia. And what other interesting things should we know about you?
I am studying public health and I'm a senior in college, so I'm almost done. I graduate in the summer and then we're moving to New Jersey to start med school. So it's exciting.
I didn't know this.
Yeah.
New Jersey. Oh my heck. Wow. Okay, that's a little far. But we'll still get to see you, right? Because
yeah, for sure.
I'm going to be stalking your grandparents and making sure that they have an extra bedroom at their house for me. So, you know, they can't get away from me, even though they're moving. So I've known Kaylee for a few years. I think, let's see her. It's been 6 years I've known you, right?
Yeah.
And I can't believe you're a senior in college. This is crazy. Kaylee, tell us your story and why you agreed to be on our show. And we'd love to hear your healing journey and your testimony and hear the words of wisdom that your cute self has to say.
I was so excited to actually when you messaged me about being on your show because I've always wanted to help people through things that have through the things that I've been through. But I don't know how to do that. And this is an awesome opportunity for me to share my story and to help people to know that they're not alone and that they're worthy of love. And so my story starts when I'm 9 years old. And we're at my grandparents' house and I'm surrounded by people that I love and I trust. And it turns out that wasn't the case. My grandpa took me aside and that's where I was sexually abused by him. I only remember that one time. I don't actually know if it happened in the past before that, but I kind of think that it did because I was so okay with it happening. But that's the only time I actually remember being abused. Okay. And I didn't even realize what sexual abuse was. I didn't know what was happening to my body or that I was being used until I was 14. And I was in a a child development class, and we were learning about the different types of abuse with little kids.
Mhm.
And I had no idea that was my story, that I had gone through what we were talking about in class. And so I raised my hand and I said, does it count as sexual abuse if it only happened one time? And they said, for sure, definitely does. And that's when I realized, like, that was me. That happened to me. And so I didn't even tell anybody about it until I was 14. And I was immediately put into therapy. My mom didn't really know what to do, didn't know who to tell. So that's where my healing process really started, was in therapy.
That's crazy. Did you, after, when you were 9, it's interesting that you say that you didn't know, right, that you were being abused. I think that's actually really very common with kids, especially if they were groomed really young, right? Because there's some where it happens so little that they just grow up being told this is normal, right? This is normal life. This is what a dad does or grandpa does, right? Like, but for you, it's interesting that you don't remember, and that you didn't think that that's what it was until you were 14. Did you, when you realized that that's what it was, were you nervous to tell somebody, or were you ready to tell? Like, did it make you think, oh shoot, like something bad happened? Like, what was your reaction there?
I was terrified to get my grandpa in trouble. I was so close with him. He was one of my best friends in the world. He always took me to do fun things. And I'm realizing now, like looking back, like that's part of the predator's cycle, is to make you trust them and for them to give you all these presents so that you don't say anything. He bought me a car so that I wouldn't say anything. And that shows me that, like, it was a big deal and I had no idea. But I was so scared to tell anyone because I would stop getting all these gifts. I would stop, like, having that relationship with him, and it would kind of. I also am a very quiet person when it comes to like being intrusive on other people. I hate doing that, and so that's kind of how I felt with him. I didn't want to intrude on his life.
Sure. Did you, what ended up happening with that relationship, and what ended up happening? Who did you tell, and did they believe you? And what was kind of the process at that point once you did tell?
The first person I told was my mom, and she was shocked. She doesn't really like to talk about things that hurt me. And so that was really hard on her, but she told my dad eventually. And then my dad's the one who reached out to him and confronted him. I'm going to be honest, I've actually never talked to him about it. I kind of cut off contact with him for good. Like I don't think that relationship really needs to be healed. That was a toxic relationship in my life, and now that I'm looking back, I see that. And I've always wondered, like, is forgiveness, like, is that completely trusting him and letting him back into my life? And I don't think that's how it is for me. Like, I know that I've forgiven him for myself, not for him necessarily. Yeah.
That's a really, really, really good point. What Kaylee just said, everybody, hear her. Forgiveness is for you. It's not for the person who abused you. It's to let go and to release the pain and the anguish that you have, right? And I think the other key point that you said is you don't have to let him back into your life if you've forgiven him, right? That is not something, in fact, I can't remember who said it in one of the conference talks. I am so terrible at remembering things like this, but there was a talk where they talk about something similar to this, and they basically say, like, we don't advocate that you continue toxic relationships. That's not what forgiveness is, right? You forgive the person, but if they're going to continue to abuse you, we're not saying go back to that, right? And I think that's really important because, like you said, sometimes I think as victims, we wonder, have I truly forgiven this person? Am I truly over it if I'm not letting them back in my life? I don't know why we doubt ourselves. I can tell you, I have the same question. I have never talked to my abuser. I've never called him up and been like, hey, I forgive you. Like, that's so awkward. And maybe that would do something for my healing. I don't know. But honestly, I have never felt like I needed to. I never felt like I needed to have that conversation. So I'm with you on that. Like, it wasn't a part of my journey. I think there's other people where that is a part of their journey. They have had to like make that closure, or there has to be that severing. But for me, I didn't have that either. Did you so I'm knowing your mom, like, she obviously believed you and did what she could, and you said she put you right in therapy. Did that help? Was that a part of your healing process? Was therapy something that was good for you?
It definitely was. My mom put therapy, and I was diagnosed with clinical depression at 15. That diagnosis, I think, really helped me to rely on the atonement of Jesus Christ for sure, because then I knew that there was something that I had that could be fixed, and that I was worthy of love. I think that was my main problem, is I didn't believe I was worthy anymore. I was 9 years old. Of course I'm worthy. It was not my fault, but I could not get past that feeling that I was unlovable. And therapy really, really helped me to realize that that wasn't true, that I was just telling myself that. And so I'm really grateful for my therapist. He was awesome, and he really helped me to understand the atonement of Jesus Christ for myself and for my own healing.
That's beautiful. Are there any other like therapy type modalities or anything like that you've done to seek further healing? Has there been anything else in your life that you've done that's helped with some of this?
Yeah, I think reaching out to my friends really helped me. Scripture study was a huge deal for me, and prayer. Those, I think, were my personal therapy that helped me the most, because when I was focused on Christ, I wasn't focused on the things that had happened to me in my past. I was focused on progressing and coming to know myself, because I think I'd lost myself in the process of mentally dealing with all that had happened to me. And so turning to Christ really helped me to get to know myself and heal from there.
I think that's beautiful. I love that. Now let's talk about how, when you were getting ready to go on your mission, and if maybe, I don't know if you have any mission stories where maybe this came up or it impacted your decision to go on a mission at all.
I think it definitely helped me to choose to serve a mission, because I wanted to help people. I really wanted people to understand that Jesus Christ loves them, because I discovered that through this process. And so you don't have to go through this experience to learn those same things, but that's what I needed in my life to really learn how to turn to him. And so I wanted to teach that to people. And I think that's a turning point when I chose to serve a mission, is I'm here for Jesus Christ and I want to be his disciple. And I can do that through sharing his light through my story. And then on my mission, I had a lot of experiences where I was able to use my past to help other people. I never ever shared my story on my mission, but I was able to relate to people who needed the savior more than anything in their lives, because I had to do the same thing. And so, especially with teenage girls, for some reason we really connected, and I think it was because like that's when I had to learn how to use it, and so I really knew how to relate to them.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I had my abuse was at age 22, and I don't even know how many young 20 somethings I have had enter into my life who have had similar stories as to what I went through, where we'll just be talking and all of a sudden randomly I'll feel like I need to tell them a part of my story, and that will open the door to them sharing a part of their story, and soon we're confiding and connecting and finding out that what they're currently going through is what I went through. I can think of 6 off the top of my head that are this, and I think there's a reason for that, right? Like Heavenly Father uses the bad things in our lives for good, right? Like it's not like he couldn't take away your grandfather's agency, right? He couldn't take that away, but what he could do was rescue you in a different way, right? He could rescue your heart, and he could rescue your mind, and he could rescue your soul and help you, and then in turn make good things come from that experience. And I think sometimes we're really reluctant to share our story, and it took me a very long time to get to a place where I was comfortable sharing. I mostly would share on one-off situations, and even that took me a long time to get to that point. This podcast, I don't know if I told you, this podcast is like 3 years in the making because I'm stubborn and didn't want all of this to be so public. I mean, it's, once you throw it out there, it's out there. Like, you can't pull it back in. And it took me a long time to realize, this is going to sound probably kind of weird, but one day I realized that it was almost like I was being selfish keeping my story in, because if I could see how it helped other girls realize that they weren't alone, like you said in the beginning, why wouldn't I want to help even more? And I'm not, please don't anyone think that I'm advocating that now you need to go share your story and get on Facebook and start telling the whole world. That's not what I'm saying. I think you need to be prayerful about who you share your story with, and you need to be prayerful about when is the appropriate time and in what way and things like that. But I think there gets to a point where in your healing, talking about it is liberating. I don't know about you, but I feel empowered whenever I talk about it. I feel liberated. I feel like we're shedding light on the darkness. Do you feel that way at all?
I definitely feel that way. I think every time I share my story with people, they come back and they realize what Christ has done for them. And when they can see that in me and they can see the light that's coming from me, they realize that it wasn't me that got through this by myself, it was Christ. And people need to hear that.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. So now that you're engaged, and you're getting ready to get married, what are some tips, let me turn my phone off, that you have for maybe some other young women who are maybe in your same boat, who've had abuse in their past and who are now looking forward to their future? What can they do to prepare for that so that it doesn't hold them back?
Yeah. Dating has been very hard for me. I have gone through boy after boy. I never trusted anybody, and it was so different with my now fiance. He so worthy of my trust. The first thing I was looking for was honesty. And so when you're dating, when you're looking for an eternal companion, I think that is a huge deal, is to find someone who you feel safe with, because you haven't felt safe in the past. And you need someone who puts God first, because then you'll know that they're going to be good to you, and they're going to treat you the way that you should be treated. You should always be treated. With my fiance, I had a hard time, even at first, to really, really trust him. It took a long time, but I've come to understand that God's in the details, and that he'll lead you to people that you need in your life, and you need to take advantage of that.
It's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I have never met him, but he seems like such a cute and sweet boy. And he makes you happy. I mean, those pictures, you're just like, all lit up, and it's just so cute. So I'm excited for you. I think it's wonderful. I felt I I don't know why I feel like I should share this, but I do. It took, I think it took me a bit with my husband as well, to trust him. I found myself repeating the abuse cycle over and over and over again. I it was horrible. um but I found that when I was closest with God was when I would find good guys. Go figure, right? When I was reading my scriptures, going to church, saying my prayers, doing all the Sunday school answers, and I was close to the Spirit, I was able to weed out the good from the bad. And it's really interesting now to look back and see like that pattern and the correlation between some of that. And that's not to say, I can think of one guy who I started dating, and I was trying to be a faithful follower of Christ. And I could see the red flags with him. And I remember we got in a fight, and I remember him grabbing my arm and pulling me out of the car. And I pulled my arm back, and I said, "You don't ever touch me like that again." And I got in the car and I drove away, and I ended it right then and there. And I remember thinking, how do I keep finding these dirtbags? This is ridiculous. This is like number 5. And I, at that point, I like realized, I learned about the cycle of abuse and how sometimes if you're not like clearing, how do I say this, not clearing the negative energy and not like dealing with it, I guess, and not addressing the issues, sometimes it can repeat itself. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, but clearly I married a good one, and we, eventually that cycle stopped. But I remember being scared for a while that it was too good to be true. But it wasn't. He was a good guy, and he is. And I think, like you said, if he puts God first, if that is the focus of your marriage, and that is the focus of your life, everything works out. Sometimes, how does that quote go? When you put God first, all things fall into their proper place or drop out of our lives. The demands on our time, the interests we pursue, the order of our priorities all fall into place, or something like that. It's an Ezra Taft Benson quote. It's one of my favorite quotes. And I think sometimes we forget about the part that says, or fall out of our lives. All those toads that you had to kiss before you got to your prince, clearly weren't supposed to be in your life until you got to this one. Right. I think that's exciting. Well, Kaylee, is there anything, I don't want to keep you too long, but is there anything else that you feel, if you were talking to maybe a teenage girl or someone who's going through something similar, what's the number one piece of advice you would give them? What is their first step, and what should they do next?
Something I wish that I would have known. I was not alone. No one is alone in this. There are people you can talk to, people you can trust, and you need to tell someone about it. And when you do, don't worry about what anyone else thinks. It's what God thinks of you, and He knows that you are worthy and you are loved.
Who should they tell?
Someone they trust. A parent, if the parent is not someone they trust, tell an adult. Tell a leader in your church, tell a teacher, a counselor, people. There are people in your circle that should be worthy of your trust.
And if there's not, heaven forbid that happens, but if there's not, I will post a link to the domestic violence hotline. And they're wonderful. They're trained and they know exactly what to do. And I hope that there's somebody that you can lean on and look to for help. But if not, they will get you an advocate and they will help you on this process of healing. I just want to say that this, for everyone I've talked to, has kind of said one version of this or not, but was healing instantaneous for you, Kaylee? Or was it a process?
It's a process that's still going on today, however many years later. So it takes time.
Absolutely. Kaylee, that was beautiful. I think you are just so sweet and your testimony is so sincere. And I love that the main message truly was that Christ is your friend and he was there for you and that he's your everything. And I think that is the point of the show, right? Is to show that he's there for us no matter what. You've been a great example of staying stalwart and like not letting your abuse derail you. And I think that's amazing, right? That's like such a sharp contrast to me because my abuse totally derailed my life and it threw me into a total tailspin. And the opposite happened for you. While you had depression, and that's, not fun by any means, you stayed on the straight and narrow and you looked to God at every moment for help, right? I blamed God. I was angry at him for a long time. I was ashamed. A lot of that was more shame and feeling like I wasn't worthy of God's love because of the decisions I had made. But ultimately, we both came to the same conclusion, right? And that conclusion is that God is here for us and he's here for everyone and he won't abandon us in our darkest times. And I think that message is the whole point of this podcast, right? That no matter what you're going through, he knows you. Thank you for sharing. And thank you for being brave. And I love that your whole reason for doing this is so that you can help people and what you're going into is going to help people. You have such a big heart. And I have no doubt that your story will help someone out there. And I'm so grateful for you sharing. Thank you so much for being here, Kaylee.
Thank you for having me.